Like I mentioned before, we want to create functions for every input, output, and calculation. We have a function print welcome that is an output function. When it's called, it prints something to the screen. And so we want to write all of our input functions. And remember, functions are like black boxes. So if I close these functions, print welcome doesn't know anything about main. And main doesn't know what's inside of print welcome. It just can call print welcome, but it doesn't know exactly what is inside and how that function is working. So we are going to create functions for every input. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to create a function, and it's going to return some data, and it's going to return the weight of the user. So it's going to be an integer return type. And I'll call this get weight, and I'm going to paste that in here. Now this won't work because, like I said, each function is like a black box. If I say cin read in the input into weight, this function doesn't have a variable called weight, and it doesn't know about the weight variable up in main. So I have to create its own copy of a weight variable. They don't share information. The information is separate within each function. So I'll create its own weight variable. I'll prompt the user for the weight. I'll read it in, and then I have to return it back to main. So I'll say return and then the variable name. The variable data type has to match the return type of the function. Since weight is an integer, the return type is an integer. Functions can only return one piece of information in C++. And so to use that function, I'm going to call the function get weight. But what this function will do is it will prompt the user for the weight, read it in, and return it. So main has to be able to store that returned value somewhere. So it will store it in a variable called weight. So I'll say weight, this weight right here is assigned whatever this function returns. So when this function is called, it will go down, it will create its own weight variable, prompt the user, read it in, and return it. So if the user types in 115, that 115 will get stored into main's weight variable. So that's how functions work. Take the time now to really understand how return values work. They're tricky, and once you understand it, it'll just click. So remember that return values have to be stored somewhere in the function that calls them. Otherwise, they just go up into air, right? It has to be stored somewhere. And so I'm going to do the same thing for height and age. So I've written my functions for get height and get age, and now I need to make sure I add my function prototypes. So I have the function prototype for get weight, and then I'll make one for get height. And then I'll make one for get age. And then I have to call those functions. So in the height variable, I'll store the returned value of get height. And in the age variable, I'll store the return value of get age function. And when I run this, the get weight function is called, right? It's right here. It print out the message, and then it's waiting for the user to type in their weight, and it will return that value, and it stored it up into main's weight, and then it's going to do the same thing for height, and then it'll do the same thing for age, and then it uses those values to do the calculation for calories, and it prints out the correct result.